I was in the garage, changing the oil on my truck, when my phone buzzed on the workbench. I wiped my hands on a rag and picked it up. It was a text from my daughter-in-law. "Hi. Just wanted to say we really appreciate everything you've done for us. Truly. But my mom's been talking to us about the holidays, and she feels strongly that Christmas this year should be just her side of the family. She wants it to be more intimate. I hope you understand. We'll make it up to you." I read it twice. Then I set the phone down, picked up my wrench, and went back to work. I didn't call my son. I didn't respond to the text. I just lay there on the creeper under the truck, staring up at the undercarriage, listening to the sound of the neighborhood, a dog barking 2 streets over, a kid on a bicycle, wind moving through the oak trees, and I thought about what I'd just read. My name is not important. What's important is this: I'm 64 years old, recently retired from 31 years in commercial construction management, widowed going on 5 years now, and I have one son. His name is Miles. He married a woman named Audra 3 years ago. She's not a bad person. I want to say that up front, because this story isn't really about her. It's about what happens when a good person lets someone else do all their thinking for them. Audra's mother, I'll call her Vera, because that's her name, moved to Scottsdale about 18 months after Miles and Audra got married. She told everyone it was because she missed the warm weather. Miles told me privately it was because she couldn't stand being more than a 30-minute drive from her daughter. I didn't say anything to that. Every mother loves her child. I understood it. What I didn't understand, what I still have trouble understanding, if I'm honest, was how quickly things shifted after Vera arrived. Before she moved to Scottsdale, Miles and I had a rhythm. He'd call on Sunday mornings. We'd grab breakfast once or twice a month at a diner on Camelback Road we'd been going to since he was in high school. He coached his company's softball team on Saturday afternoons, and I'd sometimes come watch, just sitting in a folding chair behind the backstop with a coffee, not needing to say much. That was enough. That was more than enough. After Vera arrived, the Sunday calls got shorter, then less frequent. The breakfast stopped without either of us saying they were stopping. He was busy. I was busy. I told myself that's what happens when your son builds a life. But it wasn't just the time. It was something harder to name, a kind of cooling. Like a room where someone had quietly turned down the thermostat, degree by degree, so gradually you don't notice until you're sitting there in a jacket wondering when it got so cold. I first met Vera at Miles and Audra's wedding. She was charming in the way that certain people are charming, the kind where you leave the conversation feeling like you did most of the work. She asked me about my job, nodded at the right moments, laughed when she was supposed to. Fine, weddings are performances. I didn't expect depth, but over the months that followed her move, I started to notice things. When I'd come over for dinner, Vera was often already there, her car in the driveway, her presence settled into the house like she'd been there for hours, which she probably had. I'd walk in, and the table would already be set the way she liked it, candles lit, a specific playlist on, things Audra and Miles would never have thought to do on their own. And dinner would go fine, perfectly fine, but I always left feeling like a guest, like I had been accommodated. Once, this was maybe 8 months before the text message, I brought over a toolbox I'd organized for Miles. He'd mentioned needing some things for a project in the backyard, and I'd put together a nice kit, a good impact driver, a level, some bits, a utility knife. Nothing extravagant, just a dad thing. He looked pleased. Vera looked at it and said, "Oh, that's sweet. We have a guy for that, though." She wasn't trying to be cruel. I genuinely believe that. But I stood there holding that toolbox and something in me went quiet. Miles laughed. Audra smiled. I put the box down on the kitchen counter and said, I hoped it came in handy anyway. It didn't come in handy. I saw it in the garage, unopened, the next time I was over. So when that text arrived about Christmas, the one Audra sent, the one that had Vera's fingerprints all over it, even if Audra's name was signed to it, I wasn't completely blindsided. I'd felt it coming the way you feel a storm coming in the desert. The light changes. The air pressure shifts. You know, what I didn't know was what I was going to do about it. I thought about it for 3 days. I didn't tell anyone, not my brother out in Flagstaff, not my neighbor Cliff, who I've known for 20 years, not anyone. I just sat with it. I went through the motions of my days, made coffee, fed the dog, drove out to the job site I was consulting on part-time, ate dinners I barely tasted. On the 4th day, I called my son. He picked up on the 2nd ring. I could hear background noise, office sounds, someone talking nearby. "Hey, Dad. Hey, you got a minute?" "Sure, yeah, 1 second." The background noise faded. A door closed. What's up? I said. I got Audra's text. Silence. About Christmas, I said. Yeah. His voice changed, not in a dramatic way, just flattened. Look, it's Vera's thing. She has this idea about the holidays, and Audra's been stressed out trying to keep everyone happy, and I'm not calling to argue, I said. I just want to understand something. Is this what you want? Or is this what Vera wants? Another silence. Miles. It's not that simple, Dad. I'm not asking if it's simple. I'm asking if it's what you want. He didn't answer, which was, in its own way, an answer. I said, okay, and we talked for a few more minutes about nothing important, and then we said goodbye and I hung up. I went out to the backyard. I have a decent yard, big by Scottsdale standards, with a covered patio I built myself the year after my wife passed, when I needed something to do with my hands. I sat out there until it got dark. The dog came and put his head in my lap. I scratched his ears. My wife would have known what to do. She always knew. She had this quality, I never had a name for it, where she could see the emotional architecture of a situation. She could tell you what was really happening and what you actually needed to do, and she'd do it gently, without making you feel stupid for not having seen it yourself. She's been gone 5 years, and I still reach for the phone to call her sometimes. I think I always will. What I decided, sitting in the dark with the dog, was this. I was done waiting to be included, and I was done being angry about being excluded. Those were both losing positions. What I needed was to do something practical, something that didn't depend on anyone's permission. Miles and Audra owned a house about 12 minutes from mine. They'd bought it 2 years ago. I had helped with the down payment, a fact I mentioned not to hold over them, but because it becomes relevant later. It was a nice house. A 2014 build in a good neighborhood, good schools, a yard with some mature landscaping. The house directly across the street from theirs had gone up for sale 3 weeks before the text message arrived. I had noticed the sign. I noticed those things. Construction background. Real estate is just slow construction. I'd looked it up out of habit. 3-bed, 2-bath, similar footprint to theirs. Well maintained. The price was fair. I bought it. I didn't tell Miles first. I didn't call Audra. I made an offer. It was accepted. We closed in 22 days because I paid cash, and there were no financing contingencies. 22 days after I got that Christmas text, I had keys to a house directly across the street from my son. The day I closed, I drove over and sat in the driveway for a while. Just looked at the place. It was a Tuesday afternoon, no one home across the street. Then I called Miles. Hey, I said. Are you and Audra home this weekend? I'd like to come over Saturday morning. He said, sure. He sounded cautious, but sure. I showed up at 9 o'clock with coffee and a bakery bag. Miles answered the door in a sweatshirt. Audra came out from the kitchen, a little wary. I sat down at their kitchen table, and I handed Miles an envelope. What's this? He said. Open it. He looked at Audra. She looked at him. He opened it. Inside was a printout of the closing documents. His eyes moved across the page. Dad. His voice was very careful. What did you do? I bought the house across the street. Audra made a sound I couldn't quite interpret. Something between surprise and distress. I'm not moving in next week, I said. I'm going to renovate it first, take my time, probably 6 months before I'm over there full time. But that's where I'm going to be living, across the street. Miles put the envelope down. He looked at me. I looked at him. Dad, he said again. I know, I said. It's a big move. But I'm 64. My wife is gone. My son is 12 minutes away, but I'm not sure I know him anymore, and I want to change that. I'm not moving in with you. I'm not asking to be at every dinner. I just want to be close enough that when something happens, good or bad, I'm not 12 minutes away. I'm across the street. Audra said, my mom is going to, and then stopped herself. I looked at her. I said, Audra, I have a lot of respect for you and for the life you and Miles have built. I'm not trying to interfere with your family. I'm trying to stay connected to mine. I paused, and I think we both know that the Christmas decision wasn't entirely yours. She looked down at the table. I'm not angry, I said. I understand how these things happen. But I'm 64 years old, and I buried my wife, and I'm not going to spend the years I have left being managed out of my own son's life. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then Miles said, you bought the house. I did, just like that. Well, not just like that. I thought about it for a few weeks. But yes, he almost smiled. It was a strange smile, complicated. I couldn't fully read it, but it was there. Did you at least look inside before you bought it? He said. Once. Briefly. It's got good bones. That did make him laugh. And then Audra laughed a little too, and the temperature in the room changed, and we drank coffee and ate the pastries I'd brought, and nobody talked about Vera or Christmas, not that morning. The renovation took 7 months. I was in no hurry, and I had the time. I did a lot of the work myself. Not the electrical, not the plumbing, but the carpentry, the painting, the tile in the bathrooms. I built a workbench in the garage and put in good lighting. I refinished the hardwood floors in the main rooms. I put in a raised garden bed along the south fence because I'd always wanted to grow tomatoes and never had the right setup. During those 7 months, something changed. Not dramatically, not all at once, but I started seeing Miles more. He'd come over on weekend mornings when he knew I was working, and he'd help, or try to help, because his carpentry is not what I'd call skilled, and we'd talk. Not about Vera, not about Christmas. Just talk. About his work, about a fishing trip we kept almost planning and never booking. About his mother sometimes, which we'd both been too careful to do for years. Audra came over once to look at the progress. She walked through the house quietly, touching door frames, looking at the kitchen I was rebuilding. She stopped in the living room and looked out through the front window across the street at her own house. She said, "You can see right into our living room from here." "I know," I said. "I'll plant some privacy hedges along the front, if that would make you more comfortable." She turned and looked at me. Something in her face was working out something complicated. "My mom thinks this is your way of controlling things," she said. "I figured she would. She says you're doing it to keep tabs on us, Audra." I kept my voice level. "I'm an old man who wants to live near his son. That's the whole thing, that's everything." She was quiet for a moment. "Miles has been happier lately," she said, "since you started coming around more." I didn't say anything to that. It wasn't the kind of thing that needs a response. "I should have put my foot down with my mom," she said. "About Christmas. That wasn't right." "You don't have to." "No, it wasn't. You've been nothing but generous to us, and it wasn't right." She turned back to the window. I don't always know how to stand up to her. She's a lot. I walked over and stood next to her. We both looked out at the front of her house, the driveway, the ordinary Saturday afternoon of it. "You don't have to figure that out all at once," I said, "but your husband needs you to figure it out eventually, not for my sake. For his." She nodded slowly. She didn't say anything more about it that day, but she heard it. I could tell. I moved in officially on a Saturday in March. Miles came over and helped carry boxes, which was mostly symbolic since I'd already moved most things in myself. But I appreciated it. Audra brought food. We ate lunch on the back patio, just the 3 of us. No extended family, no performance. The dog explored the new yard and found a corner he seemed to approve of. It felt like something. I wasn't sure what. Like a page turning. Like the light in late afternoon when it goes amber and long, and everything looks a little more itself. The following month, Audra's mother came to visit from out of town. She still had a place in Denver, which is where she'd lived before Scottsdale. She stayed for a week. During that week, she came across the street once. She stood in my living room and looked around with the expression of someone evaluating a problem. She said, "This is a nice house." I said, "Thank you. I put a lot of work into it." She said, "Miles tells me you did most of the renovation yourself." Most of it. She walked to the window and looked across at her daughter's house, and I watched her realize that I had a clear view of the comings and goings, that when a car pulled in the driveway I would see it, that if Miles was outside with the kids, they don't have kids yet, but they will, I would see that too. She turned to me and said, "You're very determined." I said, "I'm very clear about what I want. There's a difference." She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "She's all I have." I said, "I know. Miles is all I have too." We stood there in that living room and understood each other, maybe for the first time. 2 older people who had both lost something and were both trying to hold on to what was left. Neither of us entirely wrong. Neither of us entirely right. She left at the end of the week and things went back to normal. Whatever normal means now. Which is this. Miles and I have breakfast on Sunday mornings again, most weeks. Sometimes I walk across the street on a weeknight and Audra feeds me dinner, and afterward Miles and I sit in the backyard, and he asks me questions about construction, about the years I worked, about his mother when she was young, things he never thought to ask when she was alive, things he seems to need to know now. I answer them as honestly as I can. I leave out the parts that would only make things harder. I planted tomatoes. They did well. I brought some over to Miles and Audra in late summer, more than we needed, honestly, which is the whole point of a garden. You grow more than you need and you give it away. That's what abundance is for. Christmas came around again. Vera flew in from Denver. We had dinner at Miles and Audra's house, all of us, her mother included. I brought a pie I made from scratch because my wife used to make it, and I finally, after 5 years, decided to learn. It wasn't as good as hers, but it was decent. Vera sat across from me at the table, and we talked about the news and about a neighborhood road project that was making everyone crazy. And at some point during dinner, Miles looked at me from across the table, and something passed between us that I don't have a clean word for. Relief, maybe, or maybe just recognition. The understanding that the distance between two people is not always made of the things that happened. Sometimes it's made of the things that didn't happen, the calls not made, the breakfast not had, the years that slip by while you're both being careful and polite and terribly, painfully appropriate. I almost let that happen. I came close to just accepting it. The cooling, the managed distance, the role of the father who shows up twice a year and doesn't make things complicated. I am 64 years old, and it would have been easy to believe that was all I was owed. But I bought a house instead. Some people think it was aggressive. My brother thinks it was excessive. Vera probably still thinks it was a power move, though she's too smart to say so anymore. And maybe there was some of that in it, some stubbornness, some refusal to accept a version of events I didn't agree to. But mostly it was simpler than that. My wife is gone. My son is 38 and he's building a life, and lives take up all the space they're given. I just decided to be in the space. Not a burden, not an intrusion, just close enough to matter, close enough to be known, close enough that when something happens, and something always happens, the good things and the terrible things that come without warning, I won't be 12 minutes away on the wrong side of a silence we both let grow too long. I can see his living room from mine. Most evenings there's a light on. That's enough. That's everything.